Welcome to the Five Phenomenon Podcast. I am your host, Shane Hazen. Coming up this week, we have watched many hours of all versions of Frank Herbert's Dune and its various adaptations. With me again this week is Ted Haycraft.
Where does the message come from?
What is it?
The message is that how the new Dune starts out. What does it say?
Oh, dreams are from
dreams.
Dreams are messages from the deep.
Yes.
Oh man, I should have written this down. Oh no, we're already off to the wrong track. First off, what did you watch this week?
Actually, because
I think you're going to be in the opposite camp where I spent a shit ton of time watching these Dunes this week, and you actually got some other stuff in.
No, I did watch a lot of Dunes, but I did watch On the Rocks with
Sofia Coppola movie.
Yeah. Have you seen it?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. What'd you think? I'll put you on the spot there. It was just like a
very slight.
Yeah, like a pastry.
I watched it after the fact. I started thinking, I wish I didn't think of Francis Ford Coppola until after I saw the movie. And I was like, oh, I should have watched that with that in mind. Her relationship with her father.
Oh, okay. Yeah, well, it actually did cross my mind.
It didn't. It crossed my mind until after the movie.
I was excited just the fact that it came out on Blu-ray and DVD because that's one of those.
Because the Apple movies.
Yeah, it was an Apple movie. I thought they're not gonna, these things.
I didn't realize that new Velvet Underground documentary directed by
Todd Haynes.
Todd Haynes. The Todd Haynes Velvet Underground documentary is an Apple movie.
Oh well, hopefully that'll be on Blu-ray too. I mean, as you know, I like hard copies.
You like hard copies. Yes. You like physical media.
Yeah.
Physical media. I forgot to tell you. It completely shot on me last week. We were watching. I mentioned last episode I was watching Aliens with my nephew, and at one of the key sequences, Scratch died, and we didn't get to watch like a minute of the movie.
Oh my gosh! Yeah. Speaking of Aliens, I did see I revisited Near Dark. Show me.
How was that?
I think it wasn't the greatest print, but yeah, it's really.
It was a print.
No. It was. I mean, it was It was the print. The transfer that was.
The transfer. Okay.
It was not that great, and the way it was projected, but. It was really fascinating to revisit that thing, 1987, and I remember that thing being so cutting edge and so gruesome and hip and cool and dark and everything. And it's how much cinema's changed since 1987. It just seemed like, oh, this is rather tame. Oh, and I forgot how much it relies on the core love story in the film, and it takes forever to get going in some ways. And it's only Bigelow's second film technically. She did The Loveless with another person.
What's the one she did with Jamie Lee Curtis?
That's Blood Blue Steel.
Is that after that?
That's after this.
Okay, I've seen Near Dark, and that's one of those movies that I remember everyone loving, and I just kind of.
Oh really?
Yielded. No. I like it. I.
Well, I know what you're saying. Yeah,
I didn't dislike it at all.
But you didn't get as excited.
There's a lot to like about it.
Right. You just didn't have the buzz that everybody else had around you.
But I mean, there's plenty of movies where it's like, oh, I need to see this again. Yeah. And there's been many movies where I resaw it again, like, oh, I see what you see the second time.
Yeah, but Lance
Henriksen
is so good. Looked so.
He's got such an iconic face for the.
When he really thins out and he puts a scar on his face, I mean, he's just really gruesome.
I watched Network a few weeks ago. You know, he's got a cameo in Network.
Oh yeah, well I think the story on him I always thought was interesting. He was in Close Encounters. He's one of the.
That makes sense.
On the
one of the
at the
government guys.
Yeah, at the end, and I think the story goes that he caused some ruffle with Spielberg, and it kind of
cut him out,
kind of blacklisted him for a little bit or something, or I don't know, or something. He was on because he's in Lumet. Yeah, Lumet used him a lot of several times.
Oh, I didn't know that.
He's in. I think he's in. I want to say he's in Dog Day Afternoon, but he had a kind of a big. He was on the way to doing a. He was going up that way, and all of a sudden he ends up over here sideways in exploitation.
Our would-be Terminator. The only movie I didn't really watch much this week, but the one thing I did watch I didn't watch it all the way through. It was just on TCM. But speaking of science fiction movies from 1984 that don't exactly do good world building or look tinny, do you remember a movie with Robert Urich called The Ice Pirates?
Oh yeah. Do
you like it?
I don't think I saw it.
Okay.
I mean, but that had a big marketing push, and it was in this.
It did?
Oh yeah. In the wake of what year was that?
I think it's 84.
Yeah, that whole year, everything. With any science fiction or fantasy was just.
I think I was shocked that it was a big MGM movie, because it does. Basically, years ago when I was a kid, I had a sleepover, I watched it whenever. If my origin story for film comes from National Video in the North Side, whatever is at National Video, we rented, and at sleepovers you get the 5 for 5 days. And I remember seeing Ice Pirates right before my parents picked me up, and all of us agreed it. It was like there's something watchable about it, but it was really cheesy. But I stayed watching it this time for one particular scene. Do you know this gag? I think it's from samurai movies might do it. I remember it from this movie that I think has Christopher Lambert in the 90s. But it's a sword fighting gag where you fight someone with a sword and you do these like impressive moves, and the person you're fighting against just kind of like looks at you. And
then he falls down, or his head falls off, or his hands fall off, or whatever. Yeah,
he does he does a nod, and then it turns out his head is decapitated.
Yeah, oh yeah. That's yeah. It's been done before.
It was the first time I ever saw that, so I went a half hour in the movie. This movie's got Robert Urich and Angelica Houston. Angelica Houston's the one that does the gag.
Yeah, is it Daphne Zuniga or the girl?
No, you're thinking of Spaceballs, I think.
No, that's right. Okay.
Yeah,
who's the girl, the leading lady in Ice Pirates?
Anyway, I hate to say it. I also noted that I didn't notice.
Yeah. Oh, before we get too far away, I wanted to say about Near Dark. Bill Paxton. Boy, did we miss him. Yeah. Because he's so fun in this film. That's worth the price alone. Just watching Bill having just so much fun with this part. And they never said the word vampires in the film.
Really, Bill Paxton was a great presence in person too. I got to meet him one time. Maybe I'll tell that story someday. But we were going to be in a long episode with this because
maybe not, or maybe not. I don't know. We'll see.
We watched so much Dune. The inspiration for this is the Denis Villeneuve Part 1, of which a year coming for, at least it's been finished, waiting for release. But like this was supposed to be my next big cinema mountain to watch. Finally came, and it did. To me, it didn't disappoint.
It did not disappoint. Let me say this: that Denis did not disappoint. That's great, because I was kind of. I think. Do you remember when I said? I kind of went into this with a little bit of the shrug of the shoulders. It's a slight shrug, because
he's such a talent. You want him to be using on something else.
Well, yeah,
than the version we were seeing.
If you indulge me here, I went and saw Prisoners. I don't think I even knew who the director was.
Same with me when I watched Prisoners.
It was just, I don't know, because of the cast, I guess. Hugh Jackman in the cast.
Well, it was in Cindy's, and Prisoners script had been around for a while. Bryan Singer was going to do it for a long time.
Well, I didn't know anything about it in Cindy's at all.
Okay.
So I guess go see it, and I was like, I really enjoyed it. It was just, to me, it was just like a nice big egg.
I wasn't really that into it, but I remember thinking there's a lot of like art into it. There's a real presence, and I mean, it was shot by Roger Deakins, so that was obviously which the many collaborations he's done with Roger Deakins.
And when a film can really jolt me, almost what do you call it? The nervous reaction, anxiousness, or physical reaction, and when he's racing to the hospital near the end.
Yeah, that is a
for some reason that sequence really did a number on me, and I was like, wow, that doesn't happen all the time.
Yeah,
I see a lot of action scenes, and you just sit there and let it wash over you. So I thought that was interesting, and then I probably saw what was next? Oh, Sicario. Yeah, so Sicario comes next. And I'm like, oh my gosh, I really like this. This really riveted me. So then you and I,
we watched Enemy,
which went straight to video here in Evansville. I mean, I don't know if
I never saw it in a theater.
Yeah. So and then that sold it right there. I think that night you probably witnessed me go, I'm in.
No, we both had the same reaction, because one of the greatest penultimate shots, the last two shots of a movie.
Oh ever. Yeah, and I said, okay, this guy's it. So then I did my home. I went out and I like hard copies, so I went and I got it in Cindy's, which I thought was amazing. It was Oscar nominated.
Uh-huh.
And then the one before that about the school shooting.
That one I can't remember. Oh, we should know the name of that. That one was on Amazon Prime for a while. That one blew my mind.
Really good. And then the one about with the talking fish, and the really weird one before that.
I haven't seen that.
But then I can't find his debut one. His first feature. That's the one.
I think I have seen his first one.
Yeah, that's what you said the other day.
Yeah,
I haven't tracked that down yet.
We should acknowledge that like Villeneuve is kind of on weird comparison, but a Disney Spielberg like streak of like critical commercial.
Well, remember think about Ridley Scott. We talked about just the recent.
Oh, I guess I wouldn't compare because there's not.
No. I'm talking about I'm talking about Alien, Blade Runner, Legend. He's like so he does. Enemy has a lot of weirdness in it, and Sicario's grounded, of course. but Arrival and then Blade Runner 2049, and it's like, oh my gosh, he's hitting home runs every time.
Yeah, it's swinging for the fences and hitting home runs every time.
So
that's the streak I'm talking about.
Right. So now here we get to they announced Dune, and I'm like, really? Okay.
His enthusiasm for Dune was what kind of excited me, because we're going to come to this a lot in this episode. We acknowledge that no one has adapted Dune well, and I want to get into why. But I read the book for the first time this year in prep for this, and I got into a conversation with another friend who had read the book for the first time this year, also in prep, and we both had the same reaction where we didn't. For years, Aaron, this is one of the greatest and ultimate science fiction novels that has influenced everything. And, people have really said, this book has everything about life in it, or one of those books that encompasses everything. Yes. We both had this reaction it's fine. But then I made this realization that we all have some big world building books that assess us. And it's great to hear. Maybe if you'd read it and you don't feel it, like a Lord of the Rings or something like that, maybe you may not be into Lord of the Rings, but someone who's into Lord of the Rings. And when they sell you about what's amazing about a part of it, why it works, when you finally get Peter Jackson making his adaptation of it, and you're like, oh, I get it. Villeneuve sound like that.
Did he get it? Because you just read the book. I mean,
it's clearly the best version. My example was when I hear people talk about Dune is how I talk about Watchmen. Watchmen's mine. I don't know what yours would probably be the whole Marvel universe from 1965 to. Well, I mean, but at the same time, I don't know, because I was curious, if someone isn't familiar with the book.
Okay, but you read. What if you have you sat down and dialed yourself back and think, if this book dropping in 65. How was the impact? Can you understand?
The problem is world building books in general, and the reason in Dune with its not bad adaptations, but adaptations that don't clearly work as strongly as it sounds like it should forever. It comes with the problem that a lot of giant world building things where it's too many characters, a lot of crazy sounding names, and it's all thrown at you at once, and it's not elegantly unfolded so that you keep it. But then Jodorowsky's Dune was supposed to have been around 70. It was all the stuff from the documentary, which we were going to talk about from that too, was supposed to be around 76 or 77. Star Wars then ends up being the version of that takes a lot from Dune, but is a great example of world building where you gradually follow it into the world, and you then get your eyes are rolling so far in the back of their head. You could almost be a Huat.
My take on George and Star Wars.
But you got to admit it's an elegant world building.
Yeah, but it's world building after the fact in many ways.
It's not the details. It's how the details are then presented. From a story, the story is told.
I'm just convinced. Until George himself calls me or emails me or talks to me in person, that you can't convince me that it was just a one-off. It was supposed to be a one-off film, and it was he took everything he loved, everything from comic books to Frank Herbert to everything. And
it's clearly Dune is an influence on this.
Yeah, and I'm just thinking, and then he got it hit a nerve, and then he got to play world building from that.
Sure. It was funny
after the fact.
I got annoyed at, I think it's the first episode of the Mandalorian second season where there's a sandworm in there, and I was like, oh, it took forever to get a sandworm into Star Wars. And then someone pointed out that the pit, the Sarlacc pit in Return of the Jedi is clearly a sandworm.
Well, and the fact that Luke and Leia kiss, that he hadn't figured all that out yet. See, it's right there.
Oh, I thought you were going to do some incestual thing between Paul and Jessica or something like that, or Johnny.
But anyway, but back to the book. Getting into the book, I have not read that. I'm embarrassed to say that I have not. You are very.
Today, I also the weird thing about the book is it's intimidatingly long, but it's not as long. When I finally read it, it's published in different versions where there's a 500-page version, which is the first version, and then the doorstop that everyone knows is a 900, but it's airport level. It ends with the appendices, and I just skipped those. I read those today, so I have officially read all the first book, and I'm thinking about starting Doom Messiah too.
Well, he won all the prizes. He won the top prizes for science
fiction.
Won
the first Nebula.
Yes,
I didn't realize that.
But where does this stand in the world of literature? Is it because science fiction's always been kind of poo-pooed.
Herbert. One of the cool things the prose is for the most part okay. It's pretty good. But not it's not Neil Gaiman level of like, oh, this is a high literary level who also just happens to do genre or something like that.
Yeah, was Gaiman considered high literary?
Yes.
Amongst the critics.
Yes, Neil Gaiman is a great prose stylist.
Well, yeah, but I mean, you're saying that, but I'm talking about the hoity-toity.
Yes.
I haven't seen that. I
yes,
really.
Michael Chabon is a big. But one of the crazier things about Herbert's backstory, and that I think does come across in the book, is just there's so much, the world building, so much details, and that it really brings itself to multiple readings. And then, like, he was a speechwriter, and half of his critique of power in all the Dune novels comes out. Like, and at the same time, like in the first book, it's really just rising up, and the stuff that I'm excited about is in Messiah, which I still haven't read, but I know what happens. But like. And half his notes for Dune came when he worked for like the U.S. Agricultural Department, and he was looking at rural sand. Anyway, okay, so it comes out 1965. It has this checkered. I don't know if America had a sci-fi new wave, but if you don't count something like people are talking about the Foundation books right now because of the Apple adaptation, but it feels like the first really big science fiction world building long epic. It's like the science fiction follow-up to Lord of the Rings, and like it has that same effect for people.
Yeah, I mean, I haven't, I'm thinking about the book.
I'm asking someone who still doesn't like.
Well, I mean,
you knew people read Dune whenever.
Oh yeah, I mean, well, I've always been.
Did people try to sell you on Dune whenever over the years?
No, I grew up with friends and peers and circles of people and working at the comic book store and doing this and that. Everybody assumes that I'm a real-read science fiction reader, and I'm not. I am embarrassed to say. I have a lot in my library. I would buy it and have it on the shelf. But
that's the Ted I know. I was very tempted to get someone that is a Dune fan on here, but the thing is, we know like how overwhelming and daunting sometimes they're just like it's termite art talking about it. Okay, well let's go ahead and get to the film adaptations of it. So the first version of this was bought by you're gonna have to fill this in for me, but it's the Planet of the Apes producer.
Oh, really? Arthur P. Jacobs?
Yes, and he died in like 1972, but he was going to do the very first version.
Okay.
Yeah, and then the rights after he died, rights lapsed, and I guess that's whenever we get Jodorowsky's Dune and Michel Sardou, who they. Somehow, Jodorowsky's coming off of
Holy Mountain.
Okay, well, what's your feeling on Jodorowsky in general? Like, when you watch it, El Topo's not going to come to Evansville. Like, when did you get? Or nor is Holy Mountain, right?
No, none of those played here.
Did you see them on bootleg VHS?
I had a VHS bootleg of El Topo. Because it was, of course, mainly because I was interested in spaghetti westerns. I have an interesting history of El Topo, but I can't. I don't. That's a tangent.
I do want to do a Holy Mountain episode.
First of all, if you haven't seen Jodorowsky's Dune, the documentary put up at Sony Classics.
That's mainly what I'm
right.
talking about.
I think
yes.
You should see it. Everybody should see it. So
for years, considered the greatest movie never made, up there with Orson Welles' Heart of Darkness.
Yeah. So, what was the question you wanted now?
Oh, you know who was originally one of the people that Jacobs went after to direct Dune? David fucking Lean.
Yeah, well, that makes sense.
Right.
Yeah, I mean, desert. They're thinking desert. That's such a...
So, but Jodorowsky's coming off of Holy Mountain, which if you have not seen Holy Mountain, I've been lucky enough to only see it. I've seen it twice. I have it on Blu-ray, but I've only seen it twice and on print in theaters with people where it's not a movie I could stop. It is... you can understand going from that to why I went to David Lynch, maybe, just because Jodorowsky is one of the great surrealist filmmakers.
Right.
But at the same time, he's very literal with his stuff. And it's just like it's done in a very low grade. Sex and shit are really thrown in your face.
But what's also bonkers is he did not go looking for Dune.
Oh, but the thing about Jodorowsky's Dune, we both rewatched that documentary last night. He's also a very facetious salesman. It sounds like
What's
you hear
the-
him talking, and he tells legend of it. and
What's
it-
what's the word? Because I always butcher it with for storyteller, great storyteller.
raconteur?
He's a great raconteur.
Yeah, but he's also another word for raconteur is bullshitter.
Well, yeah.
He just the story he tells in the documentary was just like his friends liked it. So this producer's throwing some money after him, says he can do anything. He says he can do Hamlet. He can do, I forget what else he mentions. He's like, I do Dune. I have not read Dune. I should not do the accent.
But yeah, but wait, I want to get really a capsule, a summation of the Jordorosky Dune. He assembles this great, a wonderful group of people. They make this giant Bible,
including most notably Dan O'Bannon and Mobius and Chris Voss, all who ended up working on Alien.
And Giger.
And H.R. Giger. Excuse me. H.R. Giger.
Yeah, more so. But the crew and his warriors. I gathered my warriors to fight to get this dream.
One of the things I really pointed out last night in watching the documentary is he wanted Giger to particularly do the Harkonnen sequences. Oh, yeah. He has a great phrase for Giger, the ill art.
Well, that's the beautiful thing. He was going to put, Pink Floyd was going to do the music for One Planet, and the Magma.
Yeah, Pink Floyd was going to do the Atreides, and Magma was going to do the Harkonnen.
So everybody had their own look, and everybody had their own feel and song and music and everything. But anyway, the bottom line is he gets them all. They all work on this for a couple of years, and they put together. The whole film the entire film is storyboarded by Mobius, and they got this giant book. It's as big as Tim Lucas's Bava book, and it's even bigger, I think.
It's in the documentary. It's never been released or anything like that.
No, and
I don't know
why. There's only two, but see, I got the
Nicholas Winding Refn is one of the talking heads, and he says there's only two, and he says I got to watch this movie no one's ever seen.
But apparently, I got the impression there were more than two, because I think they got some left behind in studios when he went around and showed them.
Again, I think raconteur bullshitter.
Well, we don't know. I mean, they don't.
We don't. You're right. We don't.
So, but think about that, because to my mind is like, oh, George happens to walk in the studio, he sees the book, he runs through it.
Lucas started writing Star Wars in '73,
and all these guys are going.
So he would have had to gone to Herbert's book to. I don't know, like he maybe changed some stuff, but the Ralph McQuarrie, some stuff maybe I think that's posited a little in the documentary. They talk also about Star Wars riffs in there.
Yeah.
And a lot of the big question is if Jodorowsky's Dune was made, what happens to Star Wars? And here's the point I really want to make. This is going to be the next step beyond Holy Mountain with money in it. I mean, one of the reasons that they had trouble selling it to the studios who were impressed with the book is he's telling everyone it might be a 12 to 20 hour movie.
Yes. The length was going to be really long, which is, we know how that goes. Let's all go back to Stronheim, man. And Greed.
Yeah, that's a good point.
And that never goes down well. Then also, the thing about George, too, George with Star Wars, he was throwing everything in there. There's Pulp Fiction, there's Alex Raymond, there's Flash Gordon, Buck Rogers, everything is in there. And Jack Kirby, of course. All that is just all thrown.
Check out our Star Wars Jack Kirby episode.
Well, I actually said something about, I love the way, did you notice the way Jodorowsky was talking about Mobius, and he's a genius, and how he would just draw and real fast. It's exactly like Kirby. We got people talking about how Jack would sit at the drawing board and just start drawing, and without anything.
I looked up Mobius's actual filmography, because I didn't realize had much he'd actually done. We got Alien. Do you know a movie Time Masters?
Yeah, I remember the title. It's not coming. The details are not
Tron, Masters of the Universe.
Yeah.
I weirdly.
You know what John Byrne says about Masters of the Universe? The comic artist. He says that looks like the most Jack Kirby live action film ever made. It looks like a Jack Kirby film.
Weirdly, it came up on the beginning. I talked with on the Yuval Noah Harari episode with Julio Quintana about we watched that movie a lot as a kid.
No.
And both our complaint was like, it is nothing like the toys we played with. Masters of the Universe, Willow, Little Nemo, Adventures in Slumberland. Do you remember that animated movie?
Yeah.
The Abyss. And he did a lot of work on, and this one blew my mind, Space Jam.
Huh. Interesting.
And then The Fifth Element, which is a very obvious one. That's probably the one where it's most apparent.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Very French science fiction.
But then him and Jordorosky, their contribution, they did a lot together. They did the Incal, which I still have never read all the way through. I've only read the first part, not of the two parts, and Meta Barons. But
well, yeah, it makes it very clear. The
Jodorowsky's a pretty major comic book writer because of that.
Yeah, if it hadn't been for this Dune project and it also falling apart, if they had actually made the film, we would never have the comic books that Jodorowsky wrote. There's a good chance we never would have seen those.
Which I think, and there's a part of me when the little of the Incal I have read, if this is what Dune would have felt like, it's still impressive. If it feels like someone taking a really dense text who made the Holy Mountain.
Well, let me ask you this again, because about the book. I'm trying to really pin you down on this. Is the book confusing? Is the book surrealistic? Is the book hallucinogenic? Is it just a big epic story that works in a book form, and it's going to take. It may not be able to translate properly.
Rereading the appendices today, I remember that feeling where there are long passages you glaze your eyes over.
Really?
There's a lot of details in it, and there's a lot of characters in it.
But everything can gel? Does everything work?
Yes. I mean, and I think because the thing is, when you talk to someone else, it's again like reading dense world building. This is maybe a personal reaction on mine, but like other people picked up details you didn't, and then you get someone like Peter Jackson doing Lord of the Rings or Denis Villeneuve who have reread it over and over and understand the exact dramatic idea behind each scene and can make a scene like the Gom Jabbar scene work better than anyone else has, even though that's the Gom Jabbar scene is the opening scene of the novel. And like, which is what the hand in the paint thing. We've seen 3 different versions of it this week.
Yes. Yeah, I just
the Villeneuve version is the first one I've ever seen work, and maybe better even than the book.
Yeah.
Details are all over the place. When I was reading the appendices, like the Bene Gesserit woman that did the test, in the appendix says like, oh, that's the highest amount of pain a human being's ever gone through because of the played it out. That's in the appendix, 500 pages after the first scene in the book.
Well, I watched the theatrical version, Lynch theatrical. I watched the extended Alan Smithy version. I watched the TV series, and then I saw the.
We haven't detailed.
I know, but I'm just saying.
Yeah, I watched the same. I watched I watched a different cut. I watched this alternate Redux cut on YouTube instead of the Alan Smithy. But I watched the theatrical. I've seen the theatrical a few months ago, and we both watched the Sci-Fi Channel series from 2000, and then the Denis Villeneuve thing. And you were just saying.
And what I wanted to say was, every version I'm watching, I get lost. I mean, or it's like everything's not spelled out, or it depends on the writer and the director how they're jumping along and progressing, and I'm thinking they're leaving things out, or they just leave it up to mystical gobbledygook that you have to kind of.
But did you feel that way in the Villeneuve version?
Well, do you remember what I said that night? I think after we saw an IMAX, and I came out of there thinking, I think we were in the lobby, and I said, I typically dreams and things that come, dreams that come to you, and it's like, those a lot of times don't work.
I do remember you saying this.
And I said, this seems to really work. This whatever Denis, how he portrayed it and did it cinematically, it really worked, and it played off in a good way, as opposed to like a really bad example to me is Snyder's Justice League, where Bruce Wayne's having these dreams. Now, there's one with the Flash. Makes sense. The Flash can come out and warn him because he's traveling through time. Mm-hmm. Flashpoint gobbledygook, but then he's just having these flat out dreams of the future. Well,
the dreams are in the book. They aren't as deep. They are.
No.
Villeneuve uses
Bruce Wayne. I mean, I was talking about the Bruce Wayne. There's no.
The Justice League ones. We talked about this just because the subjectivities of the characters switch.
Yeah, and you're dealing with a universe where I had a dream of the future. Things.
I remember going back to our peak TV episodes. This used to be a complaint on TV a lot, where everyone wrote dreams. It was mainly like Sopranos and Buffy were the only ones that wrote good dreams, because every other person writing dreams writes them as a narrative device of like foreshadowing of where we're going to go, or whereas dreams are nonsensical. But this one's a plot device that's more of the former.
In the in a world we live in, the reality we live in, our dreams are just they're crazy, but they don't I don't wake up going, oh, I'm going to meet the love of my life, because I had this vision in my dream. Sean Young showed up in my dream or something.
I once heard dreams described as when all our senses are turned off except our brains.
Yeah, and I think Denis actually was able to unlock that much better than the previous versions.
Well, I want to get to this because I do have a thesis on this mainly, but it goes into the David Lynch thing. But and it also applies to what happened in between Jodorowsky's Dune and David Lynch's version, which is the Ridley Scott attempted version that Dino De Laurentiis picks up the rights to it. I think he spent a lot of money on it, and after Alien, Ridley Scott was going to do it, and Ridley Scott was on it for like a year, maybe 2, I think.
I'm not sure.
He left for supposedly 3 big reasons. One, he didn't get along with Dino De Laurentiis, which I don't 100% buy, because you and I were talking about this before. One, he's worked with Arnold Michelin and Jerry Bruckheimer, but also on Hannibal, he ended up working back with Dino De Laurentiis. So he has made a movie with him. The one reason that is clear, his brother died, and
not Tony. This is another brother.
Another brother. But the other big reason is the script was by Rudy Wulitzer, who was writing it, who wrote one of your favorites, Pat Garrett and Billy the Kid.
Which is interesting. I had that in my notes about something else about Pat Garrett. We'll get to that later.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
But he also wrote, you can go back to our episode on Two Lane Blacktop. We talked a little about it. Rudy Wulitzer is also a very literary. Right? His Two Lane Blacktop script was printed in Esquire, I think. And
a lot of existentialism.
Very pared down. Yeah. And one of the Ridley Scott's complaints was that he thought the novel was being too pared down. And part of me is like, isn't that the interpretation we should have been seeing all along? Like, because even Villeneuve's version, there's a part of me that thinks this plot doesn't have to be that complicated. He's made 2 movies out of it, but part of the success, I think, is how he streamlined so much of it.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. I mean, it's like he's learned from the past mistakes and really fine-tuned it. And by doing the Blade Runner sequel and Dune Arrival, he was just, I think, Denis at the right time, the right point, and the cast.
Well, you also have two unsung heroes. His co-writers, John Spates and Eric Roth. Eric Roth, who is pared down many a massive novel before.
Right.
Yeah.
Right.
You were about to say something about the cast?
No, and
it's such a perfectly cast movie.
Yeah. Well, you talk about casting from all the movies that are interesting too, but
well, do we want to stay linear on this? Cause
yeah, no, it's gonna be. I don't know how linear we can stay on this, but because we keep on jumping back and forth.
But watching all these different versions, you do get a sense of like what's well cast versus what's okay cast.
Yeah, of course. Yeah,
because there's a lot of stuff in the Lynch versions like that's great casting, and there's a lot of. Oof. But Jodorowsky's like the cast I gotta get his cast out because he was gonna have David Carradine play the Duke. One great sign that I don't think this movie would have been as good as everyone said is that Paul was going to be Jodorowsky's son.
That could be dangerous.
Yeah. Salvador Dali was going to play the Emperor of the Galaxy, which they had a pretty ingenious way of talking, because Dali said he wanted to be the highest paid actor of all time. And Jodorowsky then did the math and said, I probably only need him on screen for 3 to 5 minutes. So they're going to pay him per minute, which some actors have supposedly still done that. When we get to David Lynch's version, Sting plays the nephew Harkonnen, who's kind of a parallel to Paul. Mick Jagger was going to play him. Yeah. In the Jodorowsky version. And one of my favorites, if it had happened, was Orson Welles going to play the Baron Harkonnen.
I can't picture Orson floating around. I just don't see Orson giving into that, even as much as he was bribed.
If it would have happened, it could have been amazing.
And why is that character flying around anyway?
He's so... Again, this is one of those things in the book. I've read the explanation. I'm not remembering, but I think it's that he's so heavy.
But they give an explanation of the book. I love how they just we just take it.
But that's great granted. World building. You just let the detail happen.
Oh no!
As long as it's not confusing, you just roll with it.
Right. So yeah.
Can we roll into the David Lynch version? Because the David Lynch version, I've now. After I read the book over the summer, I was like, maybe I'll finally get it. Because what was your first David Lynch viewing? First off, let's get that out of the way.
The first time I saw it.
In Dune, yeah.
Well, it's the 80s, and all these things are coming out left and right. All these science fiction fantasy films, and
Virginia Madsen said, I think was the first one that originated this phrase, that it was supposed to be the Star Wars for adults.
Well, yeah, probably.
And was it sold to you that? Because I was too young, but there would have been toys around there.
I don't know where chronologically I saw Eraserhead. I knew about Eraserhead, but of course it didn't play in Evansville. And I had to go. I don't know if I went out of town for it once, but we finally saw it on VHS too.
You know, I first saw Eraserhead. It was when I moved out to the south side of town and went to Book Broker because you were the only place in town that had Eraserhead. You're the video store you worked at.
Yeah, I was probably making sure we had it too. Maybe no. So Elephant Men played Theater A, one of the art house type theaters here in Evansville at the time, and I loved adored Elephant Man. I thought it was great, and I was at this time I was becoming a big cinephile. And so I was reading American film, and every time I get my hands on Variety, so I was following Lynch and his career, and he was, everybody, all the critics were just, falling over each other, praising him. So I thought, oh, well, this bodes well, and so I went and saw it, big cast. They had the handout. They actually had a handout of glossary terms,
which opens the book too. There's a glossary terms open,
and they actually give you. I'm there opening weekend, and I think I walked out of it thinking, yeah, it was interesting. I didn't come out going, oh, that's a piece of crap. But I didn't come out. I don't think I came out thinking I want to see it again, because I think I only saw it once. I think, and that's a sign because in that time period. In your 20s and the 80s, you went multiple times to the movie. It was Star Wars, of course, started that.
You just weren't.
I don't think but we knew there were Lynch. We knew the Lynch moments. They were the very Lynchian moments in the film.
Speaking of becoming a big film fanatic, one of the first places when you come across Roger Ebert or Siskel and Ebert Dune was a punching bag for him forever. I think his review opens that it's like it takes 8 minutes to realize this movie's a mess. And so Dune, I didn't finally get around to watching it until high school.
Is it a mess? Is it really a mess? Do you think it's a mess?
Let's get into that. Let's get to that. So when I finally watched it, it's the scenario I was telling you earlier where someone who read the book loved the book, got a bunch of us together to watch it. And we're in high school, probably junior, senior year.
Which would have been what year?
98, 99.
Were you much of a cinephile then?
Oh, yeah. I'd seen, I hadn't seen Eraserhead, but I'd seen Blue Velvet. I'd seen Elephant Man. I'd probably even seen Wild at Heart by this point. And I'd seen Lost Highway. And but a person that loved the book was selling us on this and trying to tell us his interpretation of the book. And the first thing that is apparent to me about my rewatch of this, I think applies all of it, is that I think for a big book, the beginning of it is a little better than like the last hour, where it takes its time adapting the setup. It takes a little more time there, but then when it has to run, it reminded me a lot of Zack Snyder's Watchmen, where Zack Snyder's Watchmen is about 2.5. The theatrical version is 2.5 hours, maybe a little longer. And for the first 90 minutes, it gives 30 minutes per issue. The first 90 minutes only covers the first 3 issues, and then the last hour does the next 9.
Right.
This does that. Where the end of the
movie, you feel rushed. Yeah.
With the Villeneuve version, I'm excited about this new one because I've never seen the second half of the book adapted well into a way that's even the book itself. I'm kind of oh. Well, another thing happens, and I need someone that loves this and can dramatically shape this. And in my rewatches, from a world building standpoint, David Lynch is a savant filmmaker. One of the things that's great about him is even more than Jordorosky. Jordorosky is a great visualist and he comes up with surrealist images and throws them at you. But David Lynch lets cinema unfold. This is the man that does sound design better than anyone else. And paintings are still in time, not just random images. And his Dune has so much unnecessary fucking explanation. One of the crazier things that he keeps from the book is that internal monologues are a big part of the book. And Villeneuve adapts them in a normal screenwriter would, where it's I need to show this visually. Lynch tries this, and it's an admirable attempt, but he keeps having people talk back and forth with voiceover.
Was that done? Was that original decision? Do we know for a fact, or was that?
I think the way it's shot, it seems apparent. I think, and the other David Lynch is just not from a dramaturgic standpoint, he's never necessarily been someone that's like, I need this story to unfold in a logical way to understand what happens next. Everything that's amazing about it just happens in a dreamlike way where you maybe don't accept why it happens, but you flow with it. And like, cause like all the best drama that he's done is parts of Blue Velvet, maybe some parts of Twin Peaks, obviously Elephant Man worked, but the rest of it is just more like, what is happening? I'm going along with it.
Right. Well, yeah, history showed us that Lynch is not in his. He's obviously a reality-based type filmmaker.
Well, I forgot. I know. So, Wild at Heart's based off a book, but is Straight Story based off a book?
Oh, I forgot about Straight Story. Yeah, it's based on a real event.
I know it's a real event.
Yeah, I don't know if it's a story, but even then, it's so funny. Eraser, Elephant Man, and Straight Story probably the most straightforward films of his.
Well,
but they have he sneaks in little moments.
The problem with Dune is it becomes apparent, especially because we've talked about how much Lynch won't talk about this anymore. He's just chalked this up, and like when he does, he kind of like backhandedly says, "I think I was selling out." But you go into like in his biography, I was reading what he said about it then. What's crazy is he says that he didn't really realize that the movie wasn't working until he got to editing. He was shooting and he was fine with it. And he had a great time shooting. But he just disingenuously says, I was selling out. It went for the money. I wanted to make my own Star Wars.
And speaking of that, wasn't he offered
Return of the Jedi,
which is crazy to think about.
I don't know how that would have worked. And
but I mean,
one of the things that does not work about the movie is the special effects, which a few of the people working said that there's parts where he's like, I need this not to look like Star Wars. And there's special effects. There's a weird space sequence shot in Elephant Man where like there's a star field in there. And like some of these effects look amazing. The designs in David Lynch's Dunes all across the board are amazing. But some of the special effects look very, very, at least just not at the time where everyone was at with optical printing. John Dykstra was originally supposed to do the effects and he got knocked off. They look cheap at spots. They look like they're kind of like a paperback with like different icons moving around, paperback covers, sci-fi paperback covers.
So go back to the school presentation that you saw. What was your reaction then?
We made fun of it.
All
of us jumped on it. And what in particular,
of
course, the moment when Paul rides the worm at the end, everyone burst laughing.
I don't know what
you understand. This is the late 90s.
Yeah. Oh no, I understand. I mean, and I think it's easy. I think it's an easy shot to dump on this film, and I think I don't know. And that's where I was going to bring up these films that have come back and get rehabilitated or get a different perspective or different.
Every viewing of Dune has been better since.
Yeah,
because we talked about this on our Keep episode. There's flawed films that once you accept that they're flawed, you can appreciate them.
Well, so I was making a little list of like, okay, like some of the big ones along with Dune are Ishtar.
Well, Ishtar is just fun. I had a great time with my first.
Heaven's Gate. It's now in Criterion.
We have an episode on the cuts of Heaven Gate, and I think you can take from that episode. And I love that movie wholeheartedly.
Legend, Ridley Scott's Legend.
I've only seen Legend the one time.
There's multiple. There's
I've only seen the director's cut too.
Different music, whole different.
Yeah, I've seen the Jerry Goldsmith score.
And then those are still debatable. And I could make a bigger list. And then there's another list where I think I love the Blade Runner, which is now considered, and this is more with the box office more so than
okay.
And then Buckaroo Banzai, I would. I know some people would debate that maybe. And then I have Peckinpah's always gets in trouble with this, and Pat Garrett, Billy the Kid.
What's your thinking on this?
And Major Dundee, they were flawed because he was his own worst enemy. We looked at these films now. We know what they could have been and what they should have been, and we watch them over and over again, more so than a flawless film.
Are you saying that there's film history is littered with movies that were taken away from people that were better than you remembered?
But
that's your main list on that?
Well, there's more. But I'm trying to think of just current times. And I'm trying. We got you can go back to Greed.
There's almost
Magnificent Ambersons.
That's exactly what I'm talking about.
But I'm just
or even in the smaller versions, just with B movies.
But we watch Magnificent Ambersons over and over again, knowing it's a masterpiece. I'm not saying David Lynch's Dune is a masterpiece, But I'm saying, I think it plays better and works better now.
Yeah.
With the forgiveness and retrospect, and what he was trying to tackle, and how young he was, and still he's working with Laurentis.
So, well, let's get to for the first time, you and I both watched the longer versions, and a lot of Dune fanatics tried to say that this has become a recurring thing of big adaptations of the supposedly unfilmable books, that they just didn't get all the details in. So people have tried to put together longer cuts, which David Lynch took his name off of, had an Alan Smithy cut. You watch an Alan Smithy cut. I watched this one online called the alternate version Redux that you can find on YouTube. Was that better? Mine wasn't.
No. Did yours start out with the artwork? A narration with artwork?
No, but you notice the artwork comes in. I did watch that sequence just so I was familiar that the artwork comes in and randomly during the movie where Paul is like looking at different stuff. But that's got to be the sequence I watched was forever.
It was embarrassing because it was like weird because it was like the pre-production artwork.
Right.
They were just grabbing that to get you to spell it all out. And I don't know what was wrong with Virginia Madsen opening up in the theatrical version.
Well, the crazy thing about Virginia Madsen opening up is that weird little detail is from the book. Like each chapter in the book is from, she plays Princess Irulan.
Is she factored into the book? Does she factor in as much as the miniseries has her in?
No, the miniseries, like I don't think that's an addition. The miniseries, I don't remember this in the book.
She's got a very vital part of the miniseries,
Well, what happens is the book makes a point, especially because there's so many additional books, which I haven't read, and I want to read some of them. Villeneuve is saying he's going to adapt Messiah, which is the second, but Children of Dune, a lot of people like that trilogy. Herbert, I think, did 5 or 6 total, and he died, and then his son, Brian Herbert, took him over. But the princess is... The Alan Smithy cut, did it at least explain why she's at the end? Because the version I watched did bring the scene. Paul, you know, okay, going through all the story versions of Dune and talking about the Duke and Lady Jessica, in any version, you do realize that Jessica and Duke were not married, right?
Right.
You did pick up on that.
Oh yeah, it's very. Well, sometimes they actually tell you right out. I should have married him. I should have.
The Villeneuve version does that.
Version does.
Did you ever pick up on why that is?
Because of they were holding out in case he had to do a political marriage.
Paul marries Princess Irulan.
Yes, right. Okay. That's indicated somewhere.
I think it's in the sci-fi version.
Yeah, the TV miniseries. Speaking of which...
Well, anyway, real quickly, in the future, she pretends that she's a writer, and so every chapter opens with excerpts from her book explaining what happened.
Well, but going back, you made fun of it in the grade school viewing.
Mm-hmm.
When was the next time you visited it? Do you remember? Or I know it probably have it. That's probably unfair.
It was probably some like area where I was still like really on a wave of a few good David Lynch screens in a row, and I was like, this man's a cinematic master. I missed something, and I went back to it, and I was like, I think it's just an unfortunate circumstance.
Yeah,
it was a situation
but it wasn't laughable anymore. You didn't laugh at it anymore. Or
one of the things that really comes most in, it's a little in Twin Peaks, mostly Mulholland Drive, is that people call it kitsch, but like half of David Lynch's appeal is showing artifice, and like so like there's just like soap opera really fake acting that's going on, and then like he then goes deep underneath the surface of that seems more real and disturbing because of it. It's almost like that Montana affectation. Well, this just doesn't work in science fiction, where you have to like ground it and make it feel real, where there's artifice all around it. Kyle MacLachlan is great in everything, but he's as Paul just
people say there's a lot of flack on that about him being stiff, and
he's clearly a great actor, and he's done great performances in David Lynch film work.
I think he's fine. I mean, for my money, but another character that I think I'm curious and since you read the book, is Paul's sister. I want to see more of her. Was there scenes cut out, or that was all they shot?
That is one of those things that they rush so much because, and like I've never.
I think in one version of one of the films we watched, we don't even see them interact with each other. It seems like I'm like
in the David Lynch one.
But even though he does talk to her about like, okay, go do this, when they attack, and then there's
It's a big part of the book, and supposedly, from what I understand, it's in the sequel books.
It's a crazy. I love that.
It's so crazy.
It's
Alicia Witt in the David Lynch version.
It's Alicia Witt, very young, and it's crazy to see her that one shot in slow motion where it looks like she's killed people, and she's looking up and on the battle landscape.
I know which one shot you're talking about.
And I'm like, man, I wanted to see more of. If anything, I wanted to see more interaction between how they interact with each other, the chemistry between the brother and sister, and their machinations. And
that's where
is it in the book? But it is.
Oh,
in the book?
There's so much more in the book, and there's so much explanation, and I'm pretty sure Villeneuve is going to let that play out.
Cool.
And but at the same time, it's weird.
Oh well, yeah, I can imagine because she's got the water of life in her when she was in the womb.
The metaphor I use about world building and over explaining stuff is a certain amount of elegance in how you do it. But whenever you do something like that, it's almost like you have to treat your world building like an iceberg, where 2% of it's above the surface, but 98% of it's beneath.
I think now it's all just jumbled in my mind because I watched so much now.
I feel you, bud.
But I think I want to say that what Denis got right was you don't get lost. I didn't get lost this time. I didn't feel like we were jumping to something that I like what, whereas in the TV miniseries. In the Lynch version, and
you felt this way in the miniseries because we're going to start moving on to.
Well, the miniseries. There's some points where I was like, "What? Okay, sure," and that's always a problem with me.
And you know what? I've only had one really long conversation with someone who's a fan of the book since watching the Villeneuve version. We named like 2 or 3. There's a big scene that wasn't there that is in the scene where Paul meets the princess at the diplomatic dinner.
Right.
That's a big scene in the book. That's not Villeneuve pushed that. There's like a few little details here and there, but he didn't really miss out on much.
No, and then what about going back to Jodorowsky? I think it might have just really been another Holy Mountain type thing, whereas it's just so weird because I was looking at those. You get to see the Mobius designs of outfits. They're just way over the top.
Yep.
And I thought
the color on them, especially.
Color and the over the top, and he changed the ending. He just flat out said, I totally changed the ending.
This came up in the appendices. It's the same ending that's going to eventually happen, I guess, in the books, but it's like 3 to 500 years off.
Really, I wonder if it was Jodorowsky actually.
This comes to another question I had about the Jordorosky version is like, what the fuck did Frank Herbert think of this? Like, Frank Herbert was a fan of the Lynch version of the Lynch Dune.
Was he?
Mm-hmm.
Well, okay.
He didn't like it before he died.
I mean, it's not. Like I said, I think
at the end of the documentary, Jordorosky even says, "I am raping Frank Herbert with love." Very.
Yeah. I don't. Can you use the word rape anymore in any kind of context?
Apparently can.
But he did in this movie, documentary. But yeah, I think the Lynch movie gets a bad way over.
I do. I can't leave it without having said the positives that I had for the David Lynch version. Well, it's shot by Freddie Francis, and like he's supposedly one of the some of the actors said that Laurentiis was worried about how it looked on VHS, so they made it overlighted. But there's some interesting looking stuff. There's half of the casting is amazing in it. The sandworms, even though I made fun of that one moment, for the most part, the sandworms work amazing in it. Anthony Masters' production design. But one of my favorite things that I have loved every single time is not only Toto's score into it, but you didn't like Toto's score? I really like it. It's kind of
really.
It's kind of like but then the Brian Eno prophecy theme. Oh no, I'm totally into it. Because it's like Brian Eno doing a Star Wars. It's
right,
like,
but
do your John Williams.
It was a little bit repetitive.
Oh, it's very repetitive,
and I think that's where they kind of were not like well versed in soundtrack scoring. But you know what I really loved?
What?
In the extended cut? The little folk song that Patrick Stewart sings. Is that in your version you saw?
No, because that is one little tiny thing that character plays.
It's wonderful.
It's in the book. That character plays a kind of lyric guitar.
The miniseries I think is terrible when he does the folk song.
I don't remember.
It looks so fakey, but in the it's a cool little tune. I'm like, gosh, is that on the soundtrack? I want that tune. in the extended cut.
Patrick Stewart with a mullet.
Yeah, and
again, that's some really good casting in there.
Yeah, foreshadowing Paul Stewart's career because we didn't know who he was at the time. He was just an English actor. He was nobody when he did the Dune. Right. Paul Smith, who played Bluto in Popeye, he was the crazy nephew over Reba. I like that. I thought it was a little bit too much of the
There's a lot of that with Harkonnen in every version.
Paul, come on.
In every version.
But he did a couple of things. I like when after he walks by that cow, they're trimming that cow, and he knocks one of the little people over, just randomly.
I don't remember.
There's little things like that.
One of the things the Villeneuve version has dropped that is in every other version is there's a real implication the Harkonnens are big homosexual pedophiles.
Yeah, and then what about this? I didn't think about it the first time I watched the theatrical cut. When I watched it again, it really struck me. I love when Jose Ferrara, who's the emperor, the big battle at the end, they get on this carousel thing, and they're like, it's like dude, I always want to hear carousel music playing. They're just rolling around shooting things on this carousel. It almost almost like a metaphor of how silly war can be.
That's true. Well, there's the Hua thing where his antidote, where it's the cat getting milked.
Oh,
is there's so many weird.
And you have you said
great.
Freddie Jones as the characters that have the bad lips because they're because Brad Dourif is
right
they're both I guess what they are what the human computers are.
That was Hewitt was the Atreides version of that.
And Freddie Jones he's always fun to watch. He eats up the scenery, and Brad Dourif is always fun to watch. And then what about Jack Nance? And then you got the David Lynch stock company, the stock
Dean
company.
Stockwell is playing Ewa.
You got Dean Stockwell. You got Jack Nance, Racerhead himself, in nice little parts. And then and Everett McGill is he's the leader of the Freemen.
Stilgar?
Yeah, Stilgar in the Lynch movie. He's in Twin Peaks. Remember? He's married to the girl with the woman with the blind eyes.
Now I can picture it.
Yeah, Everett McGill.
Yeah.
Kenneth McKellen is the Baron. I thought Kenneth McKellen did a great job, and that's the really gross Lynchian, almost Cronenberg type stuff with the stuff on his face. And I like his acting choices, whereas I thought the actor, who I like the actor playing him in the miniseries, it didn't work as well. I don't think he worked as well as McKellen did in the Lynch movie.
You know what's funny thing? Villeneuve said that his version of Harkonnen was just like, we have to tone it down or make it a little more nuanced. And it's very atmospheric and very designed.
Skarsgård, perfect casting on that.
But at the same time, it's still
what you didn't
big.
Yeah.
I mean, literally. And
we got Sean Young. This is before she fell off the cliff.
Shawnee in this is unfortunate. It's just it's such a nothing role. Like Sean Young, like really got some big breaks that turned out to be kind of nothing burgers in the early '80s. Feels like.
Oh, and then he can't disappear in the movie, but the guy attending the Baron is an actor named Leonardo Cimino. There's an actor called Leonardo Cimino. He's if you're a fan of European films and exploitation films, you'll recognize his face, and he's again great casting across the board. Because he had Max von Sydow show up, and that gives
Max von Sydow is Kenny's. I think it was a character in the book is gender flip in the Villeneuve version.
Yeah.
Let's move on to the sci-fi version, which I think we can get through pretty fast because even though it was a good 4.5 hours of viewing, it didn't make an impression on either of us. It is a great,
such a strange thing.
When it came out in 2000. It was supposed to be for everyone who said like you just need to know more of the book, and it's more straight. It's written and directed by John Harrison, who was George Romero's first AD, and did the scores for Creepshow and Day of the Dead. One of the most unfortunate things about the whole thing is that there's a lot of just the money. It really it has that late 90s sci-fi thing where like just money wasn't thrown to it, and they were really trying to stretch it. And especially when you watch it on DVD, Joss Whedon's Firefly falls in the same thing where like before they up-res to HD, the special effects were done in SD, so they look less version. So it looks like you're watching I don't know, like some 90s window animation or something.
What about, of course, I know you want to talk about Sotaro. He got an Emmy. He actually
He did get an Vittorio Storaro, the man who shot Apocalypse Now, Reds, The Conformist, so much Bertolucci movies, one of the greatest cinematographers of all time. And I've never heard the official reason, but it feels like he semi-retired and then didn't. And he was a big fan of the book, and so he did this. And he's since done some Woody Allen stuff as his main work.
One of the extras on the DVD of the TV miniseries is this long, huge essay written by him. And it's like over my head about his whole vision cinematically of what he's doing or something.
What does he say?
I know, it's over my head. It's
you don't remember any details?
No, I cannot. I gave up. I was like, I read the first two paragraphs. I'm like, this is going to be, he's talking, it's like, I don't know, he's just talking open the out.
Storaro's big tricks, one of his big go-tos is that he would pick a primary color for every scene, and mainly a primary color. Yeah, but every scene has a very significant color.
Well, not every scene, but
no, I'm saying throughout his career. That's
what yeah. And this one, it starts out, I'm like, oh, this is just kind of TV. And all of a sudden, we're getting these scenes in orange and very blue and very. I'm like, oh, okay. Also, did you notice? You need to correct me if I'm wrong, because I have not seen The Mandalorian, but wasn't the whole point of The Mandalorian was they came up with that way to shoot backgrounds and shoot scenes. The state-of-the-art effects.
The backdrops in this sci-fi channel version of Dune are so apparent and so.
That was part of the plan. They go about how they go on about in the future, and how Sotaro would come up with this. They could print up these big giant backdrops.
It's not the same thing. Were the backdrops moving?
No. I'm just saying, isn't this like almost like I want to say, like I said, again, you correct me if I'm wrong, but I'm thinking this is like the original foundation of what the Mandalorian gets to.
No,
because they're using, what are they using? Are they shooting like they're not shooting green screen in Mandalorian?
In Mandalorian, what they're doing is they're taking video game 3D image engines that make up a full 3D background that is the resed up to the level that a video game would be at. And then they're making that your back screen, and with it's then coordinated with the camera. Where, say, if there's a camera movement, then the screen will move along with it. And typically, what that is doing is, say, if you're shooting some shallow focus, then it just looks accurate. But more than anything, it just naturally bounces light off everyone. You're not having two planes that you're superimposing onto each other.
And you don't have to go out in the desert to do this. You can just do it in a studio.
It's not 100% perfect, but I mean, Villeneuve obviously went to the Jordan to shoot a lot of his stuff. But
this is what they were doing in the TV miniseries. They were trying to avoid the sandstorms and the delays and the cost of.
They just don't have the money to do anything.
Right. No, but they thought they were like, if you watch the featurette on the disc.
They thought they nailed it.
They thought they were coming up with a cool visual look.
And I think some of Lynch's version is shot in a studio.
Yeah, but I mean, I'm saying I think you're supposed to kind of like accept this weird vision, even though it looks so fakey. It was done on purpose.
Backdrops are a stage affectation, and they're as old as the silence.
Well, trust me. I mean, I'm not trying to fool.
It did not work.
I'm not saying whether it worked or not. I'm just trying to think. It was a new technique that I think Victoria thought he was onto something. The way he talks about it.
Well, I think if I'm being harsh on it for saying it doesn't work, I think it's just because it was apparent and it bumped.
Yeah.
So I mean, I had notes on the wonky sets.
Yeah, no,
and I don't fault it just because it's a sci-fi channel budget from the late 90s.
And I noticed it.
90s.
You know, yeah, it's very noticeable. And then, like I said,
they're coming out stuff like like Farscape. You know.
Yeah, but it was like they were under this impression they were trying to pull off something new, a cutting edge.
I think one big observation I had about this, it really came up when the Desert Mouse came up, was that I will be more forgiving of analog, optically printed effects even with the sandworm. Well, actually not the sandworm, but these other stuff, the ships in David Lynch's version than I am with this, just because we're still with CGI and we know what bad CGI looks like. But my point was, I think the sandworm in the miniseries still looked better than the David Lynch in action whenever they finally jumped on the sandworm.
Yeah. Okay.
One big storyline that is not in the Villeneuve version that is played up. It's in the Lynch version, but it's really played up in this one. is there's a build up to like who the traitor is when it turns out to it's revealed that it's Dr. Yua, but like Jessica is thought to be the traitor. I mean that's in the sci-fi thing because Gurney Hallback I think was told that it's Jessica, and then when he sees her later, he comes after her. Because
I don't remember him being told. I just remember the scene where he attacks her.
In the book, he's told it.
Yeah, so maybe, but no. Speaking of Jessica, I think interesting enough, I think for all three have in common, they all got great actresses for all three Jessicas.
That's true.
I like the Jessica on the TV series.
Well, Jessica's just a great character.
Yeah,
and at the same time, like one of the things that I think really is exciting me about the Villeneuve version is when they took the traitor part out, it was more of a momentum because they're going to play up exactly. There's more to come. I don't think any of the versions actually gotten out. And I always forget about this when I got to the end of the book. There was a big reveal at the end of the book that I don't think has been in any of the versions.
Oh, you're talking about the Baron and Jessica? No, it's in one.
Oh, it is in the sci-fi one?
It's in the TV series.
I think Villeneuve's going to make a meal out of that.
Yeah.
But, I mean, that's what he's been building towards. Because, I mean, I think it's the second to last shot of Dune Part 1 is this kind of intimidating shot of Jessica, of Rebecca Ferguson walking behind everybody.
I still don't get, I think that, remember to ask you, the one thing about when they take Jessica and Paul and they're going to dump them in the desert, they are able to get Freeman suits and compass and all this other equipment.
Because Dr. Yu drops the stuff off.
Right.
In multiple versions, you see the diamond in there. In fact, in the David Lynch version, there's a point where Jessica has voiceover says, "That diamond is Dr. Yu." Yeah. Speaking of explaining something way too much.
But how did you know what ship they would take? That's, that's a really kind of dicey coincidence that
Dr. Yu, I don't know if it's one of those things that's like more detailed in the book, or
maybe it's in the book, maybe hopefully, because
no, the logistics is not, I don't think, but the fact is that he was betraying the Duke because his wife, but he really didn't want to betray them, and he wanted Paul and Jessica to survive.
Well, you get the indication that he because he goes on a great detail. Look, I know the Baron's going to get in your face, so you're going to be able to bite down this tooth and poison. So he knew that. So I guess he knew what they were going to do with Jessica and Paul, but he had to really know that, he had to place this stuff in the ship, the ring and the suits and all the equipment he needed. How did he know exactly which, that they would do this?
I think he was still loyal to Atreides, even though he betrayed them. Yeah. There's more about apparently the clan of doctors he comes from.
Maybe it's just the timing of the movies and the way it's edited. Maybe because he was not killed right away because he has to face the Baron before the Baron kills him. So maybe he's like seeing Jessica Paul off on the ship or something. I don't know. Maybe there's again time. There's that's another thing that's interesting. There's a lot of time that goes on. They're on when they get to Dune, the Duke and his family. Mm-hmm. It's like it takes 2 or 3 years. They're on there, right? I mean, it doesn't. When you're watching the movie,
time is like.
Yeah, you're thinking, oh, this happens. Bang, 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 bang. It all happens. No. They gotta get their they're getting their housemaids in order. They gotta move in. They gotta take the city over. They're finding things that the Harkonnens left over.
I think it gets more explicitly played out actually where the Villeneuve version leaves. Where after
I get a sense of there's a better sense of time in the Villeneuve version than I think in the other ones.
One little tiny thing I did really like about the miniseries that I hope Villeneuve kind of takes on is this feeling. Every episode ends with the saga of Dune is far from over, and this feeling that it is because it goes on forever.
Well, what about the fact that Denise I thought opens up before the Warner Brothers symbol comes up? He actually gives us a little
that blew both. I got a detail. So a friend of I saw a friend had watched a press screening of it, said that was originally Bene Gesserit women saying it.
Ooh.
And then when they came to that, I'm pretty sure it's the Sardaukar was the Emperor's army, because there's that scene before the Sardaukar attack the planet where you see their army trying to get their stuff, and there's this like panel where there's this person kind of dictating where the soldiers go, and he's speaking in this kind of like that's the sound that happens from the dreams are messages from the deep, or whatever the opening line is.
Right. But I always sometimes the beginning of a film there's something that the director does or a choice they make that makes me think I'm in for a really good movie. And
that was it.
Just the little thing like that, you know, what they take time with their title credits or whatever. It just makes me think. I love that. I remember, you know, the Last Mohicans with kind of the rocky opening where the date goes by, and then we open up in the mountains. I knew that Michael Mann we're in good hands. What about the end of the Lynch movie? I love a cast call, and they should. I love when they show you the actor,
music over the water.
They show the actor and they tell you the actor's name and the character they played, and both versions had that in there. I really like that.
Well, you mentioned Paul's sister. That's kind of played out a little more in the Sci-Fi Channel version.
A little bit more, yeah. But
they have a little girl with a British accent.
Yeah, and then I was shocked that it was confusing too that Paul has a son, and he gets killed.
Yeah,
because I thought it was the other kid. There was another kid. There was a sequence with a young kid, and I thought there was that kid of another mother. And I guess it was the babysitter and the kid.
That's an example in the David Lynch version of where like they are going through so much. So like that's one of those things.
Yeah,
like, and David, to be fair, there's some stuff. There's some points, like when they get into the desert, there's like a little bit of ping ponging that it gets rid of. It just gets them to the desert, then it gets them to the.
It goes into fifth gear, but at the last half hour of the Lynch movie, it's geared to the end, you know.
Yeah.
Oh, I thought it was hilarious.
I still want to see Children of Dune too. I think
how many outfits does the Emperor have? It was ridiculous. It was like, you know, okay, one or two different outfits, but it was like his dress outfits were just over and over, and they were getting sillier and kind of wonky. So I thought that was kind of wonky. Speaking of the follow-up miniseries, you know who the main character in there is? McAvoy.
I knew that, and Susan Sarandon's in it too.
Right.
I don't know who they play.
I didn't think Alec was that. I thought his. I don't know if the director, the writer, screenplay, Harrison's choice of. He came across a little bit pissier than he didn't.
Little Luke Skywalker-y to you?
No,
I'm talking about everyone saying Luke's pissy in the first two.
Well, more arrogant, more kind of. I didn't really want to hang with him.
The thing,
whereas Timothy, you know, I thought brought a lot of nuance to it.
Yeah. Timothy Chalamet is by far the best version of Paul. But the best thing that like is just a great casting point with Paul, Timothy Chalamet as Paul, is that you get a sense that he's going to age. He looks like a little kid, but he also looks like a very aristocratic kid.
Yeah. Of course, I'm trying to picture him as a hard case warrior, though. It's going to be interesting to see if he pulls that off.
I'll give them benefit of the doubt. I think they're going to pull it off.
Yeah. Oh well. Yeah.
I think we've gone through the Sci-Fi Channel, so we can just talk about how great this new version is.
Yeah, it's number one of the year, maybe. I don't know.
Right now, it's mine. I am not even sure how I feel about the ending. Like, because the big issue I had whenever Villeneuve said there's an obvious point to end the book. We had this conversation with your friend Dwayne Todd, and he picked it. He knew exactly where the movie ended. I still never saw it. Like, this is how you end the movie. It's an Empire Strikes Back thing where it's like the battle happens at the beginning, but like it ends on a quieter moment and a cliffhanger for what's going to come next.
And I was buzzing on the social media about he's going to get green light and he's going to finish.
We haven't even mentioned that yet, but it's official. It's the Dune Part 2 is coming.
But I didn't know that it was not complete. I mean, the story wise, going into it,
a lot of people seem to have, like, when the opening title card comes up and it says Part 1 is where people learn about it.
Well, yeah, that's it was for me. I was like, oh, okay. And then I thought the ending was wonderful. I thought it was a great point. The way we never got any more movies, because I saw somebody grousing like, they will make a point like they were penalizing the movie because we're not going to get the finished story. And I thought, no, this is fine. You know, I know the story.
I remember you said at the end of the movie, you were like, I would be fine if the story ended this way.
If we don't get another one and Denise wants to move on to something.
Obviously not fine, but you wouldn't have been heartbroken because you can tell, like,
I think he did a wonderful job.
The saga of Doom is far from over.
Yeah. So I thought it was and there's a shot of them walking, and then the vision of somebody on top of a sandworm. I think it felt right, and he shot it right, paced it right, and it left you. That to me is almost my Lawrence of Arabia sequence in some weird way. I also thought I love Javier Bardem when he shows up. He's kind of like the Anthony Quinn from Lawrence of Arabia. The lovable rogue that you love. Who's kind of rascal. He's kind of a rascal.
You know what I thought would have been your Lawrence of Arabia moment? The moment that's like an intimate detail and a big epic.
Oh yeah. And we need to talk about that. I thought.
Well, I had to pick, but we'll go ahead.
I think I told you this. I'd seen the trailer so many times, and I got a good friend Todd who he always makes a point. He closes his eyes and make sure he doesn't watch the trailer, and he's got a good point. Because by this time I was like, there are two scenes.
You wish you hadn't seen this in the.
Well, I've seen it so much that it took away a little of the potency in the movie itself. But when the father and the son talk. And he goes, all I needed you was to be my son. That's a little moment that's so great. Mm-hmm. And Oscar Isaac can't see much how great he is in that. And then what was the other one?
Duncan Idaho's.
You put him some muscle on. He goes, no, I can tell, or whatever he says. Yeah, and that's the little things.
I did. No,
no. Idaho. By the way, where does that last name come from? It sticks out so funky.
This goes into. I want to read more in the book, and the information isn't maybe in the book, but this idea that this is our world 10,000 years from now. Because in the appendices actually kind of explain what happens to religion to lead to where we're at now. And the whole narrative idea of the book is supposed to be that this is what happens when politics and religion come together. And
Denise really plays that up a little bit because we get the whole bullfighting symbolism.
You mean that this is our world?
Because
the bull is
the bull. The whole that seemed to be such our world item to be in this futuristic world.
One of the things I still haven't found an explanation for is why hereditary monarchy still exists.
Well, actually, there was in the Alan Smithy version, they tell you. There was this whole period where robots were in control.
This is a big issue that it was completed. That was when I talked to the friend about what we saw was missing. They banned artificial intelligence. That was a big detail. I was like, no mention of it in here.
So I think what happens is it got much more feudal, retroactively feudal once we got the robots out of the way.
Some of this is covered in that appendix I read today, but it's more about the religious art.
Oh, I'm thinking of Duncan Idaho. We ought to go back. Another shout out to Robert. What's his name? I wrote down Richard Jordan, an actor that this is my time period because I think he probably is dead.
You're talking about in Lynch version?
Yeah, in Lynch version.
He's the Duncan Idaho.
He's the Duncan Idaho, and he was considered a wonderful actor. Anything he showed up in, he's one of those actors everybody loved when he showed up in films, and he gets a short.
I will say that this. I mean, is it in the Sci-Fi Channel version? Duncan's Last Stand? Is that in the Sci-Fi Channel version?
If it is,
this is the one that nails it so effectively. It's so good. It's maybe not Gandalf the Grey's death scene, but it's close.
Denise one.
Yeah, Denis Villeneuve's version of Duncan Idaho's Last Stand.
And that's another weird thing about what exactly they're not consistent with the fighting techniques. The weirdly
shield.
There's the shield, and then there's another one in one of the I think the TV miniseries they do the shift, like almost like a Nightcrawler shift. And then there's also the sound effect where you use the contraption and you do your voice to fight.
That's going to come in part 2.
Yeah,
and the Lynch version is pretty. It has a scene.
And of course, eventually, it gets to the point where Paul gets to the point where he doesn't need the contraption anymore. He can just do it. And then there's then you got the voice, which is the women sect.
So there's
I'm just rambling here.
I would say the detail I thought you were going to say, which is going to be the picture accompanying this episode, is the desert mouse.
Oh well, the desert mouse. It's
going to pay off too.
The Lynch doesn't use it at all.
The desert mouse
TV series, he pops up later, and then it gives you an explanation, a name for it. And then Denise is a little bit more vague, but it pops up much earlier.
Yeah, but that's going to be a big
payoff. Yeah,
but it's the same one in the Sci-Fi Channel. Only it's done. It's done better dramatically.
Yeah.
I guess I want to end this with kind of talking about things they're looking forward to, because one of the things that I think no version is able to gotten to is what I know is supposed to happen in Dune Messiah, is that one of the friend I talked to about who read the book along with me this summer had the same complaint that I would have had if I didn't know what was going to happen. But it was basically, the phrase Mary Sue. They talked about it a lot with the new Star Wars movies with Daisy Ridley's character, Rey, where basically a character is good at everything.
Oh, yeah, okay.
Paul is like 3 messiahs in this. He's the Bene Gesserit Messiah. He's the Fremen's Messiah, and Atreides. And there is a feeling you get to the end of the book, especially, and it's accentuated in the Lynch version, where he's like, he's the Mary Sue. He's good at everything. He's Jesus of everything. And where they're going with this, like, power is not a good thing.
But again, Denise,
and I think Denis Villeneuve is the one that's actually going to show that.
He did. Right off the bat, we see Paul doing homework. We see Paul studying. Paul is open to things, and that's touched upon the other 2 versions too. But I think he did it better in terms of because there's one sequence in the TV miniseries where he just chimes in at a political discussion at the table.
Yeah, that's the big political dinner with the princess.
No, the princess is not there. This is just
a different scene.
Yeah, earlier scene where they hadn't left yet for Dune, and he just like, oh, well, you're really savvy and blah 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 blah, and it's like eased into it a little bit better, I thought. But,
okay. Well, because one thing that is not in the Villeneuve version is that his father. It's weird because it's in the trailer. That his dad, as adept as he is making mistakes. We should mention also. Did you see Denis Villeneuve's special thanks?
In the credits.
Well, one of the first credits, one of the first consultants is Kevin J. Anderson, who was along with Brian Herbert, the writer of all the sequel post Frank Herbert books.
Okay.
Which is Kevin J. Anderson wrote a bunch of the extended Star Wars books, and these were in X-Files stuff. But also in the credits, Craig Mazin, a really great screenwriter who did Chernobyl, but one that Brian K. Vaughan.
Oh yeah,
right. Brian K. Vaughan went to Instagram and said that his contribution was very low. But Dune's a big influence on all of his work, much less he's the one that's nailing a saga that big right now, the comics version saga.
I'm sure we'll see a movie version of that.
And there's a few other names, but the 3 I wrote down is he has a murderer's row of editors that he especially thank, which you got to imagine were consultants on it. He's got Stephen Mironi, Tom Cross, and Christopher Rouse. Steve Mironi was Soderbergh's editor and has edited a lot of great aughts movies. Tom Cross, La La Land, a lot of Damien Chazelle, and Christopher Rouse did some of the Bourne movies, I believe. Yeah, I mean, and there's some stuff in the trailers that is not in the movie. My point, like he's still like it was a movie that supposedly this movie's edited by the great Joe Walker, who's edited a lot of Villeneuve's movies. And it sounds like they did a little bit. They used COVID to kind of make this to massage the movie a little.
Yeah, well, I can believe that. It's because it flows smoothly, like the waters of life. The deserts, the wind blows in the desert.
Nothing excites me more than this trilogy. I hope they get part 2 makes money and they do Messiah. And it sounds like he has an idea of how to do with it.
I almost wish I had a chance to see it again before we did this podcast, just to be able to articulate more why this one. Because I saw somebody a friend of mine, I think you might know, him too. I think he got on Facebook and said, I can't. It was boring. Couldn't get into it. And this guy loves the big franchise movies. The big ones. All the go-to. And he just couldn't get into this.
Well, cool. I don't agree with him. We had HBO Max upstairs. You can watch it. I've watched it 2.5 times.
I want to go to IMAX again. I want to see it.
I've seen it twice in IMAX. I had my nephew watch it too.
Yeah. So yeah, it's wonderful.
So I guess we'll have to do an amending version of this episode. Another appendix.
Well, no, when the second one comes out, if we're still doing podcasts, we'll just do a follow up.
Or we'll do one when the third one, fingers crossed, comes out. Thanks everybody for listening. Ted, do you have anything else?
No, that's just go see Dune.
Go see Dune. This is the second episode we've ended. Go see Dune.